One of the deals that I worked on is now a unicorn called Lead School in the EdTech ecosystem. Elevar was the first investor, first institutional check that went into Lead School.
What was that check size like?
$5 to $7 million. Physics Wala had acquired a company called iNeuron. It was a 250 crore transaction. It's a transaction that's been talked about a lot in the media. And, this is always a buy versus build decision, right? Can I build this internally? Is it more efficient for me to acquire something and that becomes a part of my portfolio and then grow it from there? iNeuron was one such opportunity. Guys, understand this, that the VC model of investing is not like your typical share market investing, right? You're going to invest across 20 companies. The idea is that most of them are going to fail, but the one that succeeds will give you enough return to cover for your entire portfolio.
Okay, awesome.
I think what was fundamentally very important for me, and I guess this is more important for me coming as a woman, and some of you might be able to relate to this, was to be financially independent. And at that point, it did seem like an MBA would help me get there.
You were obviously in one of the world's biggest banks and you were doing obviously work that you enjoyed. Then why did you take this big risk of leaving that? And I think you took a salary cut in order to move out of Goldman Sachs. Why would anybody do that?
Again, don't always draw lessons from my life, but this is something that I've always fundamentally believed in, that I do what feels authentic and what feels right to me. For the last decade or so, I have been a big believer in the Indian ecosystem. I think India is the place to work, India is the place to be in, and while Goldman could have offered me the opportunity to work at global locations, work on a global problem statement, I wanted to work more closer to home. The Samara experience had instilled in me the enthusiasm of what was happening in the Indian financial services ecosystem, right? And there was a lot of action happening there. Elevar happened at that stage. It's a venture capital fund that invests primarily in financial services and education. I mean, one of the deals that I worked on is now a unicorn called Lead School in the EdTech ecosystem. Elevar was the first investor, first institutional check that went into Lead School.
What was that check size like?
$5 to $7 million.
And what do you think would it be worth now? Based on whatever is publicly known.
Okay, let me answer this differently, right? When a very early stage venture capital fund comes in, typically they will look at a dilution for the first check anywhere between 15 to 25%, right? That's the typical range for a check size of that kind. Now I'll let you guys do the math around this.
Got it. So essentially what you're saying is that if somebody would have invested in a company, say $5 million, and would have probably gotten, say, 20% of that company, then if the company's valuation today is $1 billion, then how many X has that essentially gone? So you're talking about, and typically the returns in the VC world could be anywhere between 25X to even, I think I've heard numbers like 500X also.
Absolutely. You're absolutely bang on this, because that's how the VC model works. Guys, understand this, that the VC model of investing is not like your typical share market investing, right? You're going to invest across 20 companies. The idea is that most of them are going to fail, or most of them are likely to fail, right? But the one that succeeds will give you enough return to cover for your entire portfolio. Right? So typically how the ratio will typically work is your 10 to 20% are going to make you an outrageous return. The other 20 to 30% are going to give you an okay return, or maybe get you your principal back. The rest of it is just going to go bust.
I mean, this sounds exciting. You clearly worked on a deal that also worked out so well. Then why didn't you stay put in the VC space and essentially you moved from the buy side back to the sell side? Like, why did you do that?
Right. I think, and I think earlier also you asked, right? I wanted to work in the Indian ecosystem, so moving to Elevar was a big risk, because not only did I take a pay cut, I took a role cut, moved into, sort of a role lesser than what I was already at Goldman. But I fundamentally believe that career journeys are not linear. A lot of career journeys are also moving sideways and moving back and forth between different roles. Sometimes moving down to make sure that you're realigning the direction that you are in, right? While it's good to be headed upwards, but are you even on the right ladder? I think that's the question that we all have to keep asking ourselves. I think while Elevar was a more established place, I think right after that, I joined a firm called LoEstro Advisors, which is a boutique investment banking firm like Ankit was talking about. Well, we've been in business for 4 years. The firm, while it existed, it was at a very, very early stage when I joined them. I was probably their first hire. I was definitely their first hire. I think it allowed me the opportunity to build something. Elevar had, while the role was fun, it had established processes, it had established ways of doing things. They'd been in business for 20 years. They'd seen 3 to 4 fund cycles, and they're now, I think, raising their 5th fund, or it's already been raised. I wanted to do something which was a lot more entrepreneurial.
And you basically joined an investment banking startup.
That's correct. That would be the right way to put it. Because that was an opportunity to build an investment banking firm. And we're still in the process of building that. We've been on the league table a bunch of times in the last couple of years, going head on head with...
What is the league table? Can you explain?
So league table is something that gets tracked across the investing ecosystem quite religiously. It is basically a ranking that happens every quarter, every 6 months, annually, where top investment banks are ranked according to the deals that they've executed, both in terms of the number of deals as well as the size of deals that they've executed. And banks compete head on head to be, to top the league table. I think Goldman tops it almost every year, across different league tables. So I think on the Indian league table side, in India, we've been on the league table a bunch of times. Going head on head with with a lot of more established banking competitors in the ecosystem. So it was an opportunity to sort of build that out, and that sort of felt right to me.
So tell us about some of your biggest deals, because at the end of the day, what has made the headlines and the newspapers? And
I'll take an example of a recent deal that I was a part of, that I'd run. PhysicsWallah had acquired a company called iNeuron. PhysicsWallah, as some of you know, they're doing a lot of stuff around test prep coaching, IIT, JEE, NEET. They were looking to build a new vertical around upskilling, which is something that didn't exist internally. And this is always a buy versus build decision, right? Can I build this internally? Is it more efficient for me to acquire something and that becomes a part of my portfolio and then grow it from there? iNeuron was one such opportunity. It was a 250 crore transaction. It's a transaction that's been talked about a lot in the media. The thing to understand a lot about this is, while numbers and finance and all of those are important, right? By the end of it, there are 2 counterparties, and there are the people sitting behind both of those, on both sides of those transactions, right? There is a founder who's deciding, whether to sell his company, right? A baby that he's probably nurtured for the last few years, built it with his blood and sweat. And then there are a lot of stuff that goes around on the negotiating table, because in mergers and acquisitions, you also want to think about what is the deal structure, what are both parties getting, how much cash versus stock is being exchanged, and how do I as a banker protect the interest of my client. That was a fun transaction to work on, something that I've been proud to be a part of.
No, I think that also is a great time for me to talk about our investment banking programs at Altuni. We now have an investment banking program, and Payal and the LoEstro team have been kind enough to kind of, be part of that program. They're also giving a project to people who join that, and will be super interesting to kind of learn from all her experiences of actual deal making over and above everything that she's been talking about. So anybody who's interested in investment banking, please do have a look at our iBanking course that we are doing with Payal and team. So Payal, you must be on the speed dial of how many founders in India, how many investors in India?
I know that's a tough number. That's a tough number to think of. But I think over the last 3 years, we've sort of and we've built ourselves as a sector-focused banking firm. So education is one of our core sectors, apart from healthcare, consumer, and tech. On education, at least I can safely say that if there is a transaction that's happening, we are probably being very seriously considered to run that from across different sizes. So I've run transactions starting from $1 million all the way up to $200 million. And because we've been so focused on it, we also get a lot of inbound interest from investors who want to talk to us because they see our expertise in the education sector, right? So if you build your expertise, while you will also go out and pitch and want to talk to people, you also become a magnet where people are also interested in talking to you because they feel you have value to add in terms of what they're looking at in terms of the sector. So we get a lot of international interest of people who are looking at India as an opportunity, and they want us to help them think through the India opportunity in education and healthcare now. So that's something that we do a lot of.
So before I open it up, for questions now, one last question: which is your favorite deal that you've done over the last 8 years?
I think the iNeuron physics wala was the most fun transaction that I've worked on, just for the pure nature of the deal. While the intent from both sides was there, that there was a party that wanted to acquire, and there was a party that was keen on becoming a part of, iNeuron was keen on becoming a part of the physics wala conversation. The deal structure was a lot of fun to sort of work with, right? How would that be operationalized? And there are some key questions that you answer at that point. Do they acquire 100% of the company? Do they acquire majority of the company? How is the cash versus equity structured? Because as an acquirer, I would want the promoter to continue to be invested in the business and want to continue to build it. So the right incentive structure has to exist. As a promoter, I would also want to maximize that, given I am giving away my destiny and my company, I would also want to optimize for what I am getting as a part of the process. That was and then there are legal technicalities that you have to get around to solving for that. So those are some very interesting problems, because you want to optimize for both sides, and at the same time you want to get the deal done so that you can go home and you make money as a part of this process. So that was definitely the most fun part of doing that, and that involves allaying concerns on both sides, right? And hearing them out on, and then figuring out a solution that works for everybody. And that also legally works from a structure point of view, which lawyers and company secretaries will keep advising you on.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to open up the floor for questions now. Just introduce yourself, and what your background is, and if you're joining a B school, which B school are you joining?
Hi Payal, my name is Kartike, and hopefully I'll be joining IIM Shillong. So my question for you is this: I come from an engineering background, and if I want to pursue, let's say, finance as a specialization and then move on to IB, so will that be a good career choice for me, since you have been in this field? Can you advise me regarding that?
Absolutely. I think if you find this exciting, then I think the best way to do this is learn as much as you can, and these 2 years that you're going to be in IIM Shillong is a time for exploration for you. Reach out, talk to as many people who are doing this. There's a lot of content available, online around, what the job means, what the different specializations are, what do you need to succeed in this. That's one part of your research. The second part is talking to people, who are already doing this, whether they're seniors, peers, people in the ecosystem, tracking what is happening in the ecosystem very closely, right? What are the deals that are going on? How are they working? Why are certain deals falling through? A lot of the larger deals get talked about, get tracked a lot more in the media. So following some of that, and if after the end of all of this research, the answer for you is that yes, this is exciting, then absolutely, it's a fantastic career to have.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Avinash Kaushik, and I'll be joining MDI Gurgaon. So my question is that how difficult it is to compete with the reputed iBanks when you are closing clients?
It's not easy for sure. because a lot of a lot of clients will ask you questions around, and you have to establish your credibility and your ability to get this done, right? And they are, by the end of it, taking a bet on whatever banker that they're going with, that they will be best placed to do this, right? But over the last couple of years, within that, you tend to identify your niche as well, right? So, which is why we started off with education as a sector, right? Because we identified that there was a white space there, and that we had some experience with some of the work that I had done in EdTech and one of my partners had done in education otherwise. We identified that white space, and given we were so focused on it, we were able to go talk to a client in far more depth about his business, about his industry, about his competitors, to be able to build the conviction that, hey, while somebody else might be coming in with a far longer reputation, we're going to be far more committed to the process. We will have far more depth in the industry that we're talking about, and which is where you find your own unique positioning. So a lot of times clients have gone with a larger investment banker, cancel that contract and come back to us. We've had that happen. A lot of times we've gone head on head with different investment bankers, and we've got the pitch. We must have also lost a few along the way, but that's just part and parcel of the business.
Hi Payal, I'm Rishabh. I just have two small questions for you. So the first one, what is a typical haircut that a IB will take in terms of a deal? Is it a percentage, or is it depending upon that, okay, this many people will be employed and this will happen?
Hi Rishabh, great question. I think typical investment banking works on a success fee model. So if the deal fails, nobody makes anything. And all the work that has potentially gone in will feel like undercompensated. So typically the format that works is you charge a very small upfront retainer fee as a commitment to you doing the work that you're doing. And the majority of it is a percentage of the transaction. So majority of your fee comes in as a percentage of the transaction. On the consulting side, what you're talking about is a lot more common. We do a little bit of advisory and strategy consulting as well. So on that front, we do tend to think about how many resources would be deployed over what period of time, and then we either work out a monthly retainer or some milestone-based payments.
Now coming to my second question. So from my understanding, I think finance is a very domain-specific field. So what is your opinion on generalist versus specialist in finance and in IB specifically?
I think in life and in finance, you have to think of your skill set, or I tend to think of my skill set as a T-shaped curve, right? You have to have depth in certain items, and you have to know, what you're talking about. But at the same time, you have to know a little bit of a lot of other things. So while I need to understand, finance and corporate finance and valuation and optimizing cash and ESOP and equity and dilutions, I also need to understand law. I also need to understand tax a little bit. I also need to understand how business works and what business metrics are relevant, right? I also need to understand what's happening in Russia and Ukraine at times, right? Because when you walk into a client investor meeting, and during COVID, while a lot of meetings were happening over Zoom, you directly jump into the conversation. In a lot of meetings, you might just be chatting about what's happening in the world and people might be interested in hearing your view about what's happening with interest rates globally and when the market will come back up. So it's very important to be well informed about a lot of things, which means that you have to think of your skill set as a T-shaped curve. There'll be depth in certain items that you want to build, but you also have to continue to build a portfolio of other skills.
Okay, awesome. Payal, thank you so much for sparing so much time, telling us so much about the world of investment banking and your journey. Guys, can I have a big round of applause for Payal, please?
Thank you guys.